Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
Hello, Bernice.
And, hello, mans. What are your last names? Hello there, mans.
Hello, Aki.
Hello, Stevie. How art thou?
Thou art well. How art thine?
Thine, we thee, lo and behold, art good as too. Also, and I hope thee, dear listener, art well as thine art, when thou art with one. This is Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
And not a Shakespeare appreciation podcast.
Is it not? Alas.
Alas.
Poor Yorick.
Oh, dear Lord.
Well, what the hell are we doing? We're talking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 4, entitled, Memento Mori. Little Latin. Did you take Latin, Stevie? I forget if you took Latin or just Arabic.
I did. I took 1 year of Latin at school, and I was not very good.
Surely you know Memento Mori. Is that like first year Latin? Or?
No, I'm assuming momentum or something. Remember death or fuck, I don't remember.
Yes, correct.
Is it?
It's a thing that I picked up from hanging out with weird punk rock kids. They're like, sweet, you ever heard of Memento Mori? Death comes for us all, bro. Well, we're talking about Season 1, Episode 4. It is entitled Memento Mori, which indeed does mean remember death. Today's stardate is stardate 414530.7. And, well, it's a hell of an episode.
Certainly is. Shall we run it down?
Well, we got to do a little business beforehand. A little business.
Okay.
Stevie,
Yes.
Give him a little business.
So, by now, I'm sure you're aware that we have a Patreon, and it is fabulous.
So fabulous.
So fabulous. You can join us for early access to all of our Star Trek recap episodes. For video access, you can watch us live as we do it. You can, in fact, join us. Throw us your comments. We'd love to hear from you. And, of course, once a month, we also have a watch party where we get together and watch Star Trek together as nerds. And later on, we might even have a Zoom hangout with you.
Hello.
I know. Such value starting from as little as $3 a month. If you want to join us at the Cadet, is it Emperor's Cadet? We have Cadet, Lieutenant and Commander, I believe. Or no, it's Ensign. It's not Cadet.
Ensign.
I'm so sorry. Right. Getting confused with my nautical military hierarchy.
No, you can be a cadet, but then you're not officially.
That's right.
Like Uhura is a cadet.
That's right.
Yeah, whatever.
Anyway, you can join us at patreon.com/setphasers. That is patreon.com/setphasers. And Aki dances if you are able to see the video. It's
but you can only do it if you're a patron subscriber. Yep. Well, I just made myself a little dizzy doing that, but I'm good now.
Just as well you're a musician, you don't have to dance.
It's just as well I don't have to dance, but not by law, but by the internal law of my heart. I gotta dance.
Gotta dance.
Yes, gotta dance, gotta dance, gotta dance. Broadway rhythm. It's got me to dance. And this is also not a musical podcast. This is a podcast about specifically and explicitly about Star Trek. And so let's run down this episode before I start singing other songs from.
Let's do.
It's time to run it down. Can you run it down for me? Tell me what just happened. Can you run it down for me? I'd be only too happy to run it down for you. Yes, It is stardate 3177.3. La'an, our chief of security's log, informs us that we're on our way to the planet of Phoenibus 3, delivering atmospheric equipment, a satellite that will help them filter their atmosphere. Without it, in but a few days, they will be without atmosphere, and the colony that is there will not thrive. They'd have to leave, basically. It's also Starfleet Remembrance Day, a day when all in Starfleet remember those they've lost and ships that fell to calamity or ne'er-do-wells. Pike addresses the entire ship and informs us that people wear the insignia of past ships that they were on that suffered some sort of calamity. We see La'an, who we know was on a ship that suffered a great calamity involving the Gorn, looking down at her USS Puget Sound button, but choosing not to wear it. Meanwhile, we also find out that Cadet Uhura, the aforementioned, is going to be doing a rotation in the engineering sort of sector, and she's there with Hemmer, the Einar, as we may recall, who's a bit gruff, and he's sort of quizzing her on the atmospheric equipment, and Uhura's like, "Oh, you think you got me?" She's like, "Oh yeah, well the AP-350 uses charged positron rods that filter the air." She knows all that stuff. And Hemmer's like, "Okay, pretty good, but you're gonna have to impress me with more than just a desire to impress in order to get high marks." And Uhura takes that challenge. Meanwhile, La'an goes to the bridge. Number one realizes that she's not wearing the button. She's like, "Hey, about the thing," and La'an's like, "It's no big deal. I'm not into the whole thing and the closure and all that stuff. It's not for me." Fine. The Enterprise arrives in orbit around Phoenibus 3. However, no one is responding to hails. The last transmission was 2 days ago. Spock says, "Oh, well, there's this brown dwarf star nearby that's giving off strange emissions. Maybe that's blocking their communications," but it's not that. And then they discover that the communication satellite has been destroyed. On purpose? Don't know. So they report it to Starfleet, and the protocol is for them to send an away team down to investigate. Number one preps a party, and she picks La'an to go with her. On the surface, fire and blast marks, evidence of skirmishing, detritus, clothes and blood on the walls, and a dog barking in a dark store. But no bodies. They do find some weird place where all the bodies seem to have been dragged to a central place, but the bodies are missing. Just as they're discovering that, an unidentified ship shows up on their sensors. The away team is immediately beamed up for safety. Pike calls for a yellow alert, but then the ship hails him, and he belays that order, and they are discovered they are being hailed by Professor Tandy of Phoenibus 3. And she's got a bunch of people that are injured. They're on a cargo ship that is rated for radiation, and so transporters can't get through the shielding. And when Pike asks what happens, they say, "I don't know, a blast hit us from the sky, there was a weird ringing sound, and then things get real blurry after that. And when we got up, a bunch of people from our colony or encampment or whatever you want to call it, installation, were missing, and we just got in this cargo ship and tried to get to safety." So those folks are brought onto Enterprise by means of a transport bridge, which is literally just an airtight sleeve between the two ships. And why was I saying that like I'm a science teacher? Transport bridge, which is literally okay.
Deep space tube, I believe it's called.
A deep
space transfer tube.
A tube. The witnesses, the only witness they could find is a farmer who says that he saw streaks in the sky like the fire was on, like rain on fire. There's only 100 survivors on this cargo ship. So there's many more people, but they're all gone. No body's, just blood. Then a young girl named Big comes running down the way, and she's screaming about monsters, and La'an stops her and asks if she saw something. She says, "I didn't really see it in the dark, but the thing that took Daddy made a clicking sound." And she makes the clicking sound, sort of like clicking your tongue, and La'an reacts immediately, tells the bridge to scan the area for polarized EM signatures. Spock finds that there is one such, a hologram near one of the moons, but the Enterprise can't raise shields because of the deep space tube that's to the cargo ship, and so there's a ship that's coming towards them, flying all weird and erratic and scary. La'an looks out the window and she says, "It's the Gorn." And then the Gorn ship blasts the cargo ship in the tube. Meanwhile, Lan's having these like weird flashbacks of someone else from the USS Puget Sound. We don't know exactly what's going on there, but she comes to, she's being checked on by Nurse Chapel. You see sickbay is in disarray. Several of the colonists are dead. The mother and Fig, who we met, are dead. And number one looks severely injured, but she sends Lan to the bridge. She says, if it's the Gorn, we need you up there. We also find out the hit was pretty intense to the ship. Warp is down, and Hammer is trying to secure the processor on the satellite that they were meant to deliver before they can get to warp. Shields are only at 60%. Ortega can only get half impulse because one of the impulse engines is jacked up. And Lan finally gets to the bridge, and she says, no, we can't do any offensive things. You can't try to fight these people. We have to raise shields and retreat. This was a trap. This is what the Gorn do. They get to you when you're vulnerable. They make you wear down your resources, and you gotta trust me, Captain Pike. And Pike is like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to trust you. So he goes back to Spock and he says, hey, what about that brown dwarf star? And Spock's like, well, it's a gas giant star. However, there are some things you should know about it. It's tethered around a black hole. And Pike's like, maybe we can go in there and hide. And Spock says, oh, sure, but the density within that star could crush the ship to bits. Also, it's surrounded by a volatile gas cloud, and so we'd have to turn all of our power off. Otherwise, that could create a really dangerous flashback effect. So we'll be without sensors, comms, or shields. For some reason, Pike is cool with that. And he says, you know, anyone who's following would have to do the same thing. So he makes Lan acting number one again, and they proceed, pursued by the Gorn. Meanwhile, sickbay and the main cargo bay take fire as they're trying to run. Uhura gets knocked out, wakes up in the wreckage, and finds Hammer with his hand trapped under a giant console. His fingers are broken when she finally gets him out. They try to go to sickbay, but the door is blocked by more detritus and wreckage. Also, the coolant system on the AP-350 is down, and the big bad boom is imminent. So the bridge crew is in the bridge crew meeting room. M'Benga and Hammer are on the screens. Pike asks how long before it blows. Hammer's like, hey, I've got time enough to stabilize the unit. If not, it could create an atomic blast that would take out the entire Enterprise. However, because they turned off all the systems to be inside this brown dwarf star in order to hide from the Gorn, there's no transporters, and so Pike is going to have to send a team to try and dig Hammer and Uhura out. And Hammer's like, well, I'll be working while that's happening. M'Benga chimes in and says that with sickbay all offline, they only have the things that they had, but they just took a huge hit, so they've lost all these supplies, and they're using what they can to repair people, but basically it's triage. They're just trying to like keep people alive for the time being because they can't replicate more stuff, and they're working on patients, and then he gets called away. In sickbay, we see Una, who was reported to have been fine, says, hey, I'm fine, I got a couple cuts. She just basically collapses trying to walk away. M'Benga and Chapel rush over to find out what's wrong with her. She has deep puncture holes in her torso, very, very deep, but they don't have the like super machine surgery, knife and fork, laser to patch her up. And M'Benga goes, oh, well, Chapel, you're always interested in archaeological medicine. How good are you at sewing? Chapel's like, aces. Meanwhile, in the conference room, we get the rundown of the basic situation on the ship. As I said, all the systems are down. They only have one torpedo left, a single photon torpedo. They can't fire it while they're inside the brown dwarf because a whole bunch of bad things would happen. And also, there'd be no guidance systems. Ortega asks, okay, how are we going to fight without shields or weapons? These are the Gorn, basically boogeymen. No one's ever seen them. No one really knows who they are. But Lan has seen them. And she's like that guy in Jaws. Does anybody remember that scene of anybody? Who am I not talking to 40 people? Do you ever see Jaws, Stevie?
No.
You've never seen Jaws?
No, I have not.
Oh my God, that is the next watch along. I know it has nothing to do with anything. Anyway, there's some old salty sailor who's got just mad about things, and everyone's arguing, what are we gonna do about the shark? And the sailor like scratches a chalkboard and he's like, I've seen sharks. I've seen what they do to people. They're hunters, they're predators, they're relentless, and they don't stop once they've got the flavor of blood on their tongue. Which is basically what Lan says about the Gorn. She says they're not supernatural, but they are monsters, and to Gorn, humans are just walking feed bags, just prey. So Pike's like, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to be vigilant. We're going to get creative. And he speaks to La'an privately, and he's like, hey, listen, I know you saw the Gorn, and it's pretty tough, and, you're you're a straight shooter, but, you're acting number one. You kind of got to also, your job is not just to give people orders, but also to give them hope. And he says, if you give people hope, sometimes they can do a miracle for you. And La'an says she'll make that adjustment. She's not going to lie to the crew. And Pike says, you know what? The best miracles come from truth. Pike asks La'an for more information on the Gorn. And La'an says, oh, no, I don't really. It's hard to. She's hallucinating again. She's seeing this former crew person that we don't know behind Pike. Anyway, she excuses herself. We go back to the cargo bay. Hammer is trying to work, but he's woozy and his fingers are broken, so he can't work. He's an engineer. And he says, the most important things to an engineer are their mind and their hands. And I don't have hands. And Uhura says, here's what we're going to do. You're going to have to tell me what to do, walk me through it, and I'm going to do it. And despite his having deep misgivings about any sort of teamwork, they begin to work. Meanwhile, Pike returns to the bridge. Spock has an idea. He's going to use the Coriolis within the gas giant, using the little curly cues of the ship passing through the gas in the cloud. They're able to track these weird disturbances within the whole cloud field, and using that, they're able to sort of create like a sonar situation where they can track ships moving through the gas, which is a brilliant idea. Pike says, you've just turned a compass into a radar. And doing that, they're able to find the ship that attacked them, which is 1 minute out. It's flying towards them. And Pike wonders if they can see them, and Spock has no idea. But then the Gorn go right past, so that, we can't see the Enterprise. And Pike tells Zuniga, who's somebody else on the bridge that we now know, to arm the lone torpedo that they have. And Spock reminds Pike that the guiding systems won't work in the gas giant if he's trying to fire on the Gorn. And Pike says, I'm not going to fire on it. I'm going to drop it on him. So they follow the enemy vessel using their sonar radar thing. They fly. They arrange the cargo bay so it's 90 degrees above it. They use the gravity of the gas giant to pull the torpedo out of the torpedo bay and down to the ship and destroy the ship. However, their celebration is short-lived, because shortly after they do so, they get multiple incoming signals of 3 more ships headed their way, because it was the Gorn's plan all along to sacrifice one of theirs to find out where the Enterprise was. 3 ships. 2 of them the same as the other one, and 1 very, very big, which I assume means bad, Gorn ship. La'an's like, we gotta run. And Spock's like, we do gotta run. But if we go outside of the brown dwarf cloud, they're going to be able to see us. And if they keep going in, we're going to be destroyed by the gravity or the black hole. And again, Pike likes that idea. So he tells Ortega to take the ship further into the brown dwarf, as close to the core as she can get it. And Pike believes the Enterprise can outlast these Gorn ships in that crazy pressure. Thus, they dive. Meanwhile, back in sickbay, Chapel and M'Benga are stitching up Una. Everyone's hearing all the metal groaning. That was a bad impersonation of metal groaning, but the ship is like descending, and there's more atmospheres of pressure being applied to it, and the hull is sort of bending and stretching underneath the pressure. Uhura and Hammer hear the same thing, and Uhura is having trouble running the computer and figuring out which rods are broken because the system is not quite working. And Hammer's like, we got to do this by touch. These are cooling rods, so the ones that are hot should be pulling the heat away from the system. So the ones that are cool are the ones that are broken. So that by touch, they're able to figure out how to get some of these rods out, and they keep working on that. The lower decks are beginning to buckle. Those are the most vulnerable parts of the ship. Pike orders the crew out of there, but Spock tells him there's no time left. It could destroy the rest of the ship. Pike has to order the bulkhead sealed, even though people are doing a mass exodus out of there. In the lower decks, we see Chief Kyle stops to save someone who falls down. That crew person gets up, and they're getting to a bulkhead, and the doors are closing. The crew person pushes Kyle to safety, and then is exploded by a thing when a thing happens. Pike is not happy about this loss of a single crew person, especially here on Remembrance Day. Meanwhile, the Enterprise is at the limit of the pressure that it can take, and they're going to have to stop. So he orders a full stop, and he tells everyone to battle stations to get ready for close quarters fighting, because La'an told him that the Gorn are going to try to board that ship and take them for their own evil, nefarious feedback purposes. One enemy ship attempts to follow them down into the depths of the star and is destroyed, imploded by the atmospheric pressure. However, the Gorn are relentless, and so we know that there are still 2 ships out there, one of them huge. In sickbay, we find out that Una still has 1 deep fragment left. It's stuck in her abdominal aorta or whatever, and they're gonna have to put her out, and she's gonna bleed a ton, and they'll have just enough plasma left to keep her alive in order to do that operation. And just as that happened, another patient needs that plasma. So Una, as she is taking the gas to knock her out, orders Mbenga to give that plasma to the patient, and she continues taking the gas even though she may bleed out with this critical surgery that she needs now before sepsis sets in. What are they gonna do in sick bay? Captain's log. Pike has a little time to get away. He's like, listen, 3 civilians have died, 7 crew have died, but he's determined to keep everyone else alive. Spock pipes up and mentions that the black hole is sucking down more of the brown dwarf than they thought, a little bit quicker than they thought, and they have an hour and 32 minutes before the Enterprise won't be able to get away from the gravitational pull of the black hole. In order to figure out what's going on up top, they either have to go up, reveal themselves, and possibly have to run and fight from the Gorn, which they cannot do in their critically wounded state. And so La'an suggests sending a shuttle up to check out the situation, a shuttle that could check things out with less of a footprint. And she volunteers to fly that shuttle, and Spock volunteers to go, saying she'll need backup. Pike gives them the Galileo and tells them to be back on the ship in 30 minutes, no matter what. Spock and La'an are in the shuttle, and they see the 2 remaining Gorn ships. They're doing like a little recon on them, and they're like scanning each other, like pushing lights onto each other's hulls, like laser lights. And Spock's like, actually, it looks weird that they're scanning. Why would they do that? And La'an says it's actually something else. She mentions the Puget Sound and being attacked by the Gorn, but says that she feels like she's seen those lights before. She doesn't know what it means. Her mind is sort of like protecting her from the trauma. And she suggests that maybe a mind meld, a Vulcan mind meld, might help her find that information where it's buried in her mind. And even though Spock has his reservations about the effect it may have to unbury this trauma, La'an is adamant. And thus, they meld. They dive, they meld. La'an, memories resurfacing on the Gorn planet in the caves where they were brought to be food for the hatchlings and hunted day and night. And Spock tells La'an that her mind is resisting, and La'an says, I'm scared, but I don't want to stop. We see a young La'an running with that person that we saw before, that face that we keep seeing, looking down at her, smiling. We hear the clicking of the Gorn, and the person tells her that, hey, I've been taking out the lights, and that's how the Gorn talk to each other. And he hands her sketches that he's deciphered how it works. He says, you got to take this information. You got to run. I can't come with you. I can't escape. She sees the code and realizes that she knows this code. It's in her. And he tells the person, that friend, that face, tells her to run. And that's when she realizes we realize, I guess she knew the whole time. It's her brother. She's seeing her brother. Because that was the ship she was on with her family. And Spock says at that point her subconscious has set a boundary and they can't go any further. However, Spock's subconscious is letting the little thing slip, because Spock's subconscious allows La'an to hear Burnham's voice and discover that he had a sister that's not shown in Starfleet records, and so on and so forth. And so Spock's like, we're going to end this mind meld. But La'an realizes that Spock has lost somebody important as well. They come out and La'an's like, hey, I have an idea. I know that code. Here's what we need to do. So they fly closer to the ship. They send a message from the ship, from the smaller vessel, looking like it's coming from the smaller vessel to the larger vessel, I believe, that humans have boarded the ship and taken it over, which the Gorn absolutely would not accept. They would kill anyone that showed that kind of sort of weakness, and the big ship destroys the small ship. So we're down to one ship, the big ship, but it's scary. They come back. Cargo bay. Uhura finishes the repairs. Hammer starts passing out. She talks to him to keep him conscious. She learns about the whole thing because Einar, a pacifist. Why did he join Starfleet? He wanted to be a botanist. He won't fight for Starfleet, but he will defend its ideals. They, a little bit of conversation about what pacifism means. Then a new alarm goes off, and it looks like, hey, this thing's going to blow up come hell or high water. The only options are to vent the entire bay and everything in it into space, including Hammer and Uhura. Otherwise, it's going to explode and take the whole ship with it. They notify the bridge. They say they got 20 minutes to the explosion. The brown dwarf is also dissolving a little too quickly for comfort. And Pike wants to use the black hole to slingshot the Enterprise to safety. However, Spock says it's impossible because the remaining Gorn, well, he says it is mathematically possible, but the remaining Gorn would have an opportunity to pursue because they would see the Enterprise coming out of it. And that's when Pike says, well, why don't you explain gravitational redshift? And now that means I have to somehow explain gravitational redshift. Did I Google it? You better believe I did. Okay, so redshift. Are you going to hit Google that?
No.
I don't know. I don't even know what it could be for Aki as a nerd and Google's redshift. Here's the theory. The theory is you're at the edge of a black hole and you're moving faster than the speed of light into, like, past the event horizon of said black hole. So the light that you're actually sending out to someone who is observing you from further away is moving slower than you're moving. And so that optical illusion would make it seem as if you were still where you were when you are in fact moving faster than the speed of light in a different direction. That makes sense?
Oh, totes.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I fully understand it either. I do remember what the redshift has to do with whether light is moving closer to or further away from you, depending on which wavelengths are closer to you as an observer. But, oh boy. The point is, it will allow the Enterprise to look like it's in one place when it is, in fact, in another place. And that's when Pike asks, hey, maybe we're going to play dead. And La'an gets it. And they begin to prepare for this crazy thing where they're going to fly as close to the accretion disk as possible and bounce off of it and do the slingshot effect, but hope that as they get close to it, they can drop the AP-350, which is about to explode, and have it act as a decoy and look as if, when the Enterprise is in that gravitational redshift illusion, like the Enterprise has exploded, thus causing the Gorn to believe that the Enterprise has died. Right? Whew. Uhura and Hemmer put on EV suits and attach themselves to the deck of the cargo bay. And the bridge prepares for the maneuver, which Ortega says if they pull it off will officially be called the Pike maneuver. Pike opens a shipwide channel. He tells the crew that Starfleet is not given to fear and that this will not be their last mission but their finest hour. They fly toward the event horizon, pursued by the Gorn ship. The Gorn ship breaks off as they get too close. Ortega hits the edge of the accretion disk. Spock is able to reach through the G-forces to hit the button to vent the cargo hold. The AP-350 goes out. The Gorn ship sees the satellite blow up and flies off, thinking it is the Enterprise. The Enterprise slingshots back out. After a bit of breath-holding anticipation, we find out that Uhura and Hemmer are still alive, even though their bolts like half broke off in the flying. Pike walks over to La'an. He's like, hey, I think that was pretty much a miracle, don't you? And La'an's like, what about next time? He's like, next time? Well, they won't catch us sleeping. She's like, but it's a concern that they're looking for new hunting grounds. They're further out than they've ever been. Number one, Una Chin Riley comes back around to discover that she didn't die, but in fact was kept alive by, well, it seems Dr. Mbenga hooked himself up his own blood and plasma to keep her alive through the procedure. La'an goes back to her room and for the end of Remembrance Day puts on the pin of the USS Puget Sound. She gives a personal log where she mentions that, yes, 7 of the crew died and everyone's taking it hard, but we survived. And at that moment, she comes into the bay where the coffins are and sees Pike, and Pike nods, and La'an nods back. And that is the end of Season 1 of Episode 4 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Memento Mori. Let's chat about that.
I say, darling, let's do a quick chat about that.
Yes, let's do. We got through it. Wow,
Tired?
It's hard to do this without tea. Well, okay, I'll say the first thing that I thought was cool about this episode, apart from all the obvious things, I really enjoyed that the first half of it was like one of those like submarine movies from World War II. It was like all this like ship stuck, you can't see.
Dive, radar.
Yeah, dive, radar, yeah. Trying to find the enemy in the darkness, and you got to sneak up behind them, and that was cool. And the ship creaking was a great effect as it gets too deep. I thought that was super cool. We never see the Gorn.
Interesting.
Right. Because if anyone's ever seen the original series, I don't know what episode it is where Kirk meets
It's
the
basically
Gorn.
a mini T-Rex.
Yeah, it's just like a mascot. It's like a dude in a mascot suit for a T-Rex with big bulbous eyes, and I don't know how they're going to retcon an actually scary looking Gorn lizard man.
Where was that photo? Do you remember there was a band photo with you in the rest of Lake Street, and I took a Gorn and superimposed it.
Where is that photo?
Yeah, it must be somewhere.
We posted it. It's got to be on
Did
our
I?
thing.
Oh, that's good. I'll have to admit, I'll double check. But I loved that one. I thought that was quite funny of me.
Meme game strong.
Meme game strong.
The Gorn.
The Gorn.
Yes.
Oh, I see
Fight
it.
to the death.
There it is.
You found it.
I did. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, that's the Gorn, everybody.
Yes. I don't know, maybe it looks like the Gorn's doing a thumbs up wearing what can only be described as a 1960s mini dress.
Mm-hmm.
Now standing, obviously, next to Mr. Burmese on the album cover, obviously, with his band. Anyway, if you like to follow us, we're on Instagram, then you can check out that post from January.
Sweet content.
There you go. January 2021. See, you can repurpose it all the time. Anyway,
that was
Gorns.
January, John. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah. Anyway, we haven't seen the Gorn, so I wonder how. It seems like obviously they're setting up that we're going to be dealing with these Gorn again.
We
Right?
have to. What was I'm trying to think. Have there been species that we have not seen? Species 3, 4, the Voyager one. Did we ever see them?
We see species 3, 3, 4, 5, 9, whatever
7
they're called.
point. Never remember. Did we do?
Yeah, we do briefly see them like eating Borg at the end of a hallway. Yeah, they kind of look like the aliens from Alien.
Okay. I couldn't remember if we actually saw them. You know, it's a really effective tactic when you're storytelling to not reveal. Like, you build the fear by not revealing the predator or whomever. Like Jaws, you don't see Jaws really until the end of the film, do you?
Right.
Not that I'd know, because I haven't seen it.
Not that you'd know, not because you haven't seen it, have you?
No. Oops.
You've not watched Jaws, have you?
No, but I did go on the ride at Universal, and that was terrifying.
You rode the Jaws ride and you haven't seen Jaws.
Yes. My parents thought that would be fun.
Fun.
Maybe nightmares for years.
I imagine that the ride is not nearly as like delectable and sumptuous a cinematic experience as the original Jaws is.
Have you been on it?
Of course not. I'd be terrified.
The ride is you're on a boat, and there is a boat next to you that gets eaten by Jaws. So it's
Sure.
quite interactive. I'll give them points for that.
It's quite interactive. Jaws never does that.
Get
in
very
a
wet.
movie. Listen, the problem with Jaws is, and yeah, this is important, folks, for understanding Star Trek, is that they jumped the shark, quite literally, after the first Jaws movie. They were like, let's make more Jaws and keep making the shark bigger. And there's one where like the baby of one of the sharks comes back with revenge on its mind. It's preposterous. The original movie is about a shark that attacks like 3 or 4 people, and then people are trying to kill the shark, and they have to find it. And there's like a little bit of a standoff at the end. You see like parts of the shark, and apparently, you only see that because the animatronic, the like machine, screwed up, and so it forced Spielberg to use it less, which obviously makes the movie better. Which I agree, yeah. Which also makes the Gorn exciting.
And I do know that, fun fact, it was filmed in Martha's Vineyard.
Oh yes, many times have I gone to the what they call the Jaws house.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the house. Oh, I think I just passed the bit on the beach.
The beach, and there's like
bit.
a house that's Roy Scheider's character is called Chief Brody. I didn't go past Brody's house if you're in the right place on the island.
We digress. Let's get back to this.
We do digress. Anyway, we haven't seen the Gorn, and I bet we will at some point. I thought we might, because he was like, get ready for close quarters fighting, but we didn't. Anyway.
Close quarters. I love that. Anyway.
There's more to La'an's story even than we have now, right? Her subconscious has given us a block, so we have to wonder what else. What else?
We also have to wonder, I think, if the rest of like the bridge crew at least will find out about Discovery or not.
Right. Pike knows about it, and Number 1 knows about it.
Mm-hmm. But La'an got a glimpse into Spock's mind with his mind meld, and heard Michael Burnham's voice say, "I love you too, brother." And so she says, "You don't have a brother. I checked Starfleet's records, blah 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 blah."
And he's like, we better end this.
It's time to end this. Let's finish. Let's finish it here. Let's not talk about this ever again.
I mean, that's going to be a tension for the whole show, of course. But can Uhura ever know? Like, if Uhura knew that Spock had a sister, that would be a whole thing, right? So for timeline purists who freaked out during Picard season 2, they lose their minds. But so far so good. New characters finding out about Spock's sister is fine.
All right. Any other thoughts?
What other thoughts? Oh, purely nerdy thought, and at me if you give. But they spent so much time in this star near a black hole, and then they bounced right off the accretion disk. They slingshotted around the black hole's dense, impossibly dense core, and there was no time dilation. They should have come back, and it should have been like 4 months later or something.
That's very nerdy. I like that.
Anyway, it's a thing I wrote down. Do we have any news?
I don't have any news. We do have 1 or 2 Easter eggs. Do you want to
Have
see
we
Easter
now?
eggs? We do.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's I, Occupy Mason. You're here at Set Phasers TV news, and we go directly to the Easter egg desk. Stevie, what have you got for us today?
Well, hi there, Augie. How you doing? Happy to be here. As always, how you doing today?
Happy to be
I
here.
never usually throw back to you, do I? just thought I would do it fun.
Nope.
So, we are here on the set of Strange New Worlds, episode 4.
Mm.
And I have a couple of Easter eggs for you. It wasn't chock full of Easter eggs as some of our previous episodes have been. However,
Quite.
1 or 2. So you did mention, obviously, this was mostly a sort of submarine-type episode. And that in itself, I think, was somewhat of an Easter egg. But, bit of an obvious one, so let's go for some of the less obvious ones. Matter synthesizers. When Dr. Mbenga mentions that they go offline, obviously we're like, oh, matter synthesizers. So the original series did not have replicators like TNG, but we did see lots of food slots in TOS. And in Disco, a matter synthesizer was used many times. Clearly a forerunner to the replicator. So that's just if you are nerdy and watching and thinking, hey, where's the replicator? What's the matter synthesizer? There you are. Back in sickbay, Dr. Mbenga mentions or references archaeological medicine. Slightly, this is a bit of a tenuous link, slightly referencing the city on the edge of forever. The original series episode in which Bones gets grossed out by 20th century hospital. So bit of a throwback because it's like, oh, can you do archaeological medicine? So it's
Yeah. Oh, sutures. Oh, yeah.
Yes. Spock's mind meld, obviously, with Michael Burnham. That's a nice little Easter egg for Discovery. And my last one was the Pike maneuver, or a mention of, this could be known as the Pike maneuver. What was interesting about that is that it is the opposite of the Picard maneuver. So Picard made it look like the Enterprise was in 2 places at once.
Yes.
And Pike made it look like the Enterprise had stopped moving. So I thought that's quite cute.
Very cute. Love it.
There we are. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Aki, that's everything down here on the Strange New Worlds Easter egg desk. It's back to you in the studio.
So good to hear from you. So good to hear from you. So good to hear from you, Stevie.
To hear from you, so good.
Yeah. Let's move on to quotable moments.
Quotable moments. I had a few. What did you have?
I've got a few as well. I think they're all dialogical. The only one I have that is standalone is Hammer saying that is me learning how to read. Hammer saying pacifism is not passivity. It is the active protection of all living things in the natural universe. Boy, that was hard to say. Harder even still to do.
I liked Ortega, and yes, it was somewhat dialogical, but full impulse into a giant gas cloud of death. Why not?
Yeah,
Cute.
Speaking of Ortega, I really loved you mentioned it, but Pike says, I don't like it either, but the Enterprise has to dive. Take us down, Skipper. And Ortega says, aye, aye, Captain. Dive, dive, dive. Which I really loved. Oh, yes. Also, when they mention that there's a black hole, Ortega looks over and says, how big of a black hole? And Pike says, one problem at a time. Anything else?
Oh, I like Nurse Chapel's line. I hear it's like giving birth out your mouth.
Oh, yes. And number one took the words out of my mouth. She said, who says that?
Yes.
Yikes. Yes.
The real Chapel's quite quirky. I'm enjoying it.
It's very chapel-y. Very chapel-y.
Yeah. La'an, I had one more, and she said, the enemy doesn't care about my feelings, so I don't spend any time having them.
So hardcore.
Dark.
And one thing I found very, very cute, Uhura and Hemmer, when he's injured, and Uhura says, here's what's going to happen. You're going to talk me through what to do. We're going to be a team. And Hemmer says, it's not that simple. There's a variety of data that only I can assess. And Uhura says, and I'm the only one with a working set of fingers. And Hemmer says, I am not fond of teams. And Uhura responds, get fond. I liked that. Get fond.
I missed that. Good one. Yep.
Yeah.
I like it.
I think that's it here from Quotable Moments. Oh, no. There's one heartstrings when the one person who saved Chief Kyle dies. And Spock says, you made the logical choice. And Pike says, why doesn't it feel like that? And Spock says, for the same reason you made it, because you value life.
Very, very deep. Very good.
And with that, it's time for next time.
Next time on Set Phasers.
Oh, hell yeah. Next time on Set Phasers, I'm trying a new thing. Next time on Set Phasers, we'll be talking about Season 1, Episode 5 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I looked up the title of it since we're doing this so late. It's called Spock Amok.
Oh, what fun. What fun these producers are having.
What fun these producers must be having. Spock Amok. So anyway, if you enjoyed the program and all the shenanigans herein, we do put out new episodes every Monday as often as we can find a place and internet to do it on Mondays or sometime soon thereafter the episode drops. And you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, any kind of podcast app. But yes, please do listen to all of our episodes. We get tons of Star Trek content.
We do. Join us at patreon.com/setphasers, where you can become part of our Set Phasers Star Trek nerdy community and join us for watch parties, Zoom hangs, and all sorts of fun. You'll get behind-the-scenes access to episodes such as this, get to watch the episodes live, all the things. Patreon.com/setphasers, and you get to see Aki dance.
Yes, and while I dance, I'll mention that we have social media. We're at Set Phasers Podcast on Instagram and Set Phasers Podcast on Facebook. We have a website that's called www.setphaserspodcast.com,
I believe.
And you can check out lots of cool stuff there. Mostly cool things that Stevie has created, because Meme Game's strong.
I try my best. And you can see that picture of Aki with a GORN. In fact, Aki, why don't you just put it in your story?
I will.
Well, that's everything here from us at Set Phasers. I am Stevie Mounds.
And I'm getting fond of teams. And this has been Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
Computer. End program.
Da 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 da.